My boss's daughters inherited his roofing company and cut my pay in half. 3 months later, they were on their knees begging me to come back. 2 weeks after we'd buried Frank, his lawyer read the will in a way that made my stomach drop. To Carol, Beth, and Annie, I leave my roofing company to be split equally among them. The 3 daughters sat up straighter, smiling at each other. None of them had ever worked a day in the business. To Cole, I leave my personal toolbox and my gratitude for 12 years of service. That was it? A toolbox? There must be some mistake, I said. I've been running this company for 12 years. Carol glanced at me with this dismissive little smile. Well, at least we kept you employed. Most people don't get anything. I sat there staring at that toolbox, my mind racing. 12 years, every weekend, every emergency call, every sacrifice, and I got tools I could buy at any hardware store. 1 week later, Carol called me into the office. They'd redecorated. Frank's old wooden desk was gone, replaced with some modern glass thing. All 3 daughters were there. Carol had a laptop open with a PowerPoint presentation titled Maximizing Efficiency. We've been analyzing the numbers, Carol said. We're cutting your salary from $95,000 to $55,000, effective immediately. We'll each be taking $120,000 as executive salaries. My jaw dropped. You can't cut my pay by 40%. We need better profit margins, Beth said. You're paid too much for manual labor. I'm not manual labor. I've been running this entire operation for 12 years. I handle estimates, manage the crews, deal with suppliers, file all the inspection reports. Annie cut me off. We've already decided. Carol slid a contract across the desk. 60-day probationary period, at-will employment, non-compete clause. I scanned it quickly. I'm not signing this. You don't understand this company operates under my master contractor's license. Without me, you can't legally take on new jobs. All 3 of them stared at me blankly. What does that mean? Beth asked. It means I'm the licensed contractor. The business needs me to... Carol waved her hand. We'll figure it out. Sign the contract. I'm trying to explain that you need... Stop making excuses, Beth snapped. There are plenty of contractors looking for work. You're not special. I took a breath, trying to stay calm. The crew, Fred, Tommy, and Ray, they're loyal to me personally. Fred's worked under me for 8 years. If I leave, they'll leave too. Annie laughed. Employees are replaceable. And the suppliers, I continued. I negotiated all the terms personally. The net 60 payment schedules, the bulk discounts are based on my relationships, not the company's. Vendors don't care who signs the checks, Carol said dismissively. They do, and I've been their contact for over a decade. My voice was rising. When Frank got sick 3 years ago, this company was going under. I'm the one who turned it around. I work 70-hour weeks. I take calls at 2 in the morning. I've sacrificed everything for this business. Carol stood up. You're an employee. That's your job. You should be grateful we're keeping you on at all. She pointed at the contract. Sign it by the end of day or clean out your desk. I looked at the 3 of them. They had no idea what they'd inherited. They saw me as some guy who climbed on roofs, not the person who actually ran everything. You have no idea what you're doing, I said. Beth crossed her arms. We own this company. You work for us. That's when I understood. They would never see me as anything but the help. I stood up. I quit. Carol's mouth fell open. You can't just quit. I absolutely can. Annie stood up. You signed a non-compete when Dad hired you. Actually, I didn't. Your dad and I had a handshake deal. Check your files. Beth crossed her arms. Fine, leave. We'll hire someone better anyway. I headed for the door, then turned back. Just so you know, there are 3 commercial jobs in progress. You need inspection approval by Friday, or you'll owe penalties. Your crew gets paid in 5 days. And this business operates under my master contractor's license, not the company's. You have 30 days to find someone else or get your own license. Carol laughed. You're bluffing. No, you need me. You'll figure that out soon enough. I walked out. 3 months later, my phone rang at 11:48 at night. Carol's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer. Cole, we need you here tomorrow morning. 7 sharp. Excuse me? Fred quit last week. Took Tommy and Ray with him. You need to get them back. Also, 2 jobs are behind schedule and clients are threatening to sue. And suppliers won't deliver without cash up front. You need to smooth this over. She was giving me a to-do list, like I still worked for her. Carol, I don't work for you. We're offering you your job back. $65,000. No. Beth grabbed the phone. $70,000. Final offer. Still no. You have a non-compete. I never signed one. Annie's voice cracked in the background. We can't make payroll. The bank's calling in our loans. Carol again. We'll give you 20% ownership. Please, Cole. Name your price. I started my own roofing company 6 weeks ago. Fred, Tommy, and Ray work for me now. Your failed clients? They hired me to finish their jobs. Beth screamed. We'll sue you for stealing our business. You can't sue me for not being your employee. I hung up without another word and sat in my truck outside the job site, hands shaking on the steering wheel. The nerve of Carol calling me at midnight like I was still her employee. Like I owed her anything after what they did. My phone buzzed twice more with calls from her, then Beth, then Annie. I turned it off and shoved it in the glove box. They could figure out their own mess. I had a roof inspection to finish for Adelaide's commercial property, and I needed to focus on that instead of letting their problems ruin my morning. I grabbed my clipboard and hard hat, climbed out of the truck and headed toward the building where Fred was already waiting on the roof with his measuring tape. The morning sun felt good on my face as I climbed the ladder, pushing thoughts of the Cantrell daughters out of my mind. I had my own business to run now, and it was going better than I ever imagined. At lunch, Fred and I sat in the shade of my truck eating sandwiches when he looked over at me. "You okay? You've been quiet all morning." I took a drink of water and nodded. Carol called me last night at midnight. Fred stopped chewing and stared at me. What did she want? She wanted me to come back and fix everything. Said Fred quit and took Tommy and Ray with him. Clients are suing, suppliers won't deliver. Fred started laughing so hard he nearly choked on his sandwich, coughing and pounding his chest. Wait, she thought we still worked there? She actually gave me a to-do list. Like I was supposed to show up this morning and start solving their problems. That's perfect, Fred said, wiping his eyes. They're getting exactly what they deserve. Remember when Beth called us replaceable? I remember. How much did they offer you? Started at $65,000. Got up to 20% ownership by the end. Fred whistled low. You told them no? I told them I already have my own company and their failed clients already hired me. Beautiful, Fred said. Just beautiful. We finished lunch and went back to work on Adelaide's roof, checking every seal and flashing point. I was marking measurements on my clipboard when Adelaide walked up to the building and called up to us. Cole, can I talk to you for a minute? I climbed down and met her by the front entrance. She was holding a folder and looked concerned. I've been hearing rumors about the Cantrell Roofing Company, she said. They're leaving jobs unfinished all over town. Clients are threatening lawsuits. I heard something about that, I said carefully. I almost hired them before I chose your company. Their bid was lower. My stomach tightened. What made you go with us instead? I called some of their references and 3 different people told me you were the one who actually ran that company. They said if you weren't there anymore, I should hire you directly. I felt something loosen in my chest. I'm glad you did your research. Me too, Adelaide said. From what I'm hearing, they're in serious trouble. I dodged a disaster. That evening, I was sitting in my small office going over tomorrow's schedule when my phone rang. Kenneth's name on the screen. Cole, I've been reviewing the contracts for those 2 new commercial projects we just won. Everything look good? Better than good. But I'm hearing interesting things around town. Word is spreading fast about the Cantrell daughters running their company into the ground in 3 months. I leaned back in my chair. Is that helping us or hurting us? Helping. Everyone in the industry knows you were the one who really ran things when Frank was alive. The fact that the company fell apart the second you left just proves it. Your reputation is growing because of their failure. That feels weird, I admitted. It shouldn't. You earned that reputation through 12 years of quality work. The Cantrell name had nothing to do with it. The next morning, I was on another job site checking a delivery when my phone rang. Luther from the supply warehouse. Cole, I need to ask you something. The Cantrell daughters just tried to place a large order with us. Their credit is maxed out. What did you tell them? I told them we need cash up front. They got angry and hung up. What's going on over there? I quit 3 months ago and started my own company, I said. Fred, Tommy, and Ray came with me. I figured something like that happened, Luther said. Your orders stopped coming through and suddenly they're placing orders that make no sense for the jobs they have listed. They don't know what they're doing, I said. Frank's daughters inherited the company but never worked in it. That explains a lot. Listen, I want to offer you something. Those bulk discount terms you negotiated when you worked for Frank, I'm extending them to your new company. I stopped walking. Seriously? Your payment history was perfect for over a decade. That relationship was with you, not the Cantrell name. The company on the check doesn't matter to me. I appreciate that, Luther. More than you know. You earned it. I'll send over the new contract today. 2 days later, I was at a different job site with Fred, Tommy, and Ray when a car pulled up. Beth got out and walked toward us, trying to look casual but clearly nervous. Cole, can we talk privately? She asked. I kept working on the measurements I was taking. No, anything you need to say can be said in front of my crew. We don't keep secrets here. Beth glanced at Fred, Tommy, and Ray, then back at me. Fine, we want you to come back. $75,000 salary and 15% ownership. My crew stopped working and stared at her. I set down my clipboard and looked at Beth. No, that's a generous offer, she said, voice rising. You'd be part owner. I'm not interested in any offer from people who called me replaceable manual labor. Fred made a sound that might have been a laugh. Beth's face flushed red. We're prepared to take legal action. You stole our clients. I didn't steal anything, I said calmly. Clients chose to hire me based on my reputation. That's our intellectual property, Beth snapped. You can't just take our business relationships, a voice spoke up behind me. Actually, he can. I turned to see Kenneth walking over from where he'd been reviewing permits with the building inspector. He held out his hand to Beth. Kenneth Hale, Cole's attorney. Beth ignored his hand. He signed a non-compete. No, he didn't, Kenneth said politely. I've reviewed all the documentation. Cole had a handshake agreement with Frank Cantrell. There's no written non-compete, and clients have the right to hire whatever contractor they choose based on reputation and quality of work. We'll sue anyway, Beth said. You're welcome to try, Kenneth said. But I should warn you that frivolous lawsuits can result in countersuits for legal fees and damages. Clients choosing to hire a different contractor based on that contractor's personal reputation is completely legal. Beth stared at him for a long moment, then turned and walked back to her car without another word. She peeled out of the parking lot, tires squealing. Fred whistled low. That was something. Kenneth and I walked to the coffee shop down the street after Beth left, sitting at a corner table away from other customers. He pulled out a notepad and pen. Desperate people do unpredictable things, he said. Beth just proved that by showing up here. You think they'll actually sue? Probably not. They don't have the money or the legal basis, but they might try to damage your reputation out of spite. Bad reviews, complaints to licensing boards, rumors to suppliers and clients. What should I do? Document everything. Every phone call, every interaction, every threat. I want you to start keeping detailed records of all client communications, project completions, and any contact with the Cantrell daughters. He slid a folder across the table. I put together a simple tracking system. Log date, time, person, and summary of every interaction. If they try anything, we'll have a complete record to defend against it. I opened the folder and looked at the forms inside. This feels excessive. It's protection. Right now, your business is growing and their business is failing. That creates motivation for them to lash out. We need to be ready. Okay, I said. I'll start logging everything today. Kenneth nodded and finished his coffee. How's the business doing otherwise? Good. Really good, actually. We're booked solid for 3 months and I just got 2 more referrals this week. Keep doing what you're doing, Kenneth said. Quality work and professionalism will always win in the long run. The following week, my phone rang while I was reviewing material quotes at my desk. The building inspector's name showed on screen. He got straight to the point. The Cantrell daughters had missed 3 inspection deadlines on their remaining jobs. The clients were facing penalty fees because the permits were about to expire without final approval. He said he'd tried calling their office multiple times, but nobody answered or returned his messages. I thanked him for letting me know and hung up, feeling a mix of satisfaction and frustration that they were proving exactly how incompetent they were. 2 days later, Adelaide from the property management company called. I'd worked with her for 5 years when I was with Frank. She asked if I could take over an unfinished project the Cantrell daughters had completely botched. They were willing to pay the contract termination fee just to get someone competent on the job before the penalties got worse. The project was a 4-building apartment complex that needed roof replacements, and they were already 2 months behind schedule. I told her I'd come look at it that afternoon and give her an assessment. When I arrived at the site with Fred, what I saw made my stomach turn. The Cantrell daughters had cut every corner possible. Flashing was installed wrong around the chimneys. Underlayment was missing in several sections. Shingles were nailed too high, which meant they'd blow off in the first strong wind. Fred walked the roof with me, pointing out violation after violation. This wasn't just amateur work, this was dangerous. I took photos of everything and made detailed notes. Adelaide met us in the parking lot afterward, and I showed her the pictures. Her face went pale. She asked how much it would cost to fix everything. I gave her a rough estimate that was nearly double what the Cantrell daughters had originally bid. She didn't even hesitate. She said to draw up the contract and she'd sign it immediately. I called Kenneth that evening and explained the situation. He told me to document everything wrong with the Cantrell daughters' work before I touched it. We needed protection in case they tried to blame me for their failures later. He recommended hiring an independent inspector to photograph and report all the violations. That would create an official record of their bad work. The inspector came out the next day and spent 3 hours documenting everything. His report was 12 pages long and included over 40 code violations. Kenneth filed it with the city and kept copies for our records. Fred, Tommy, and Ray started the repair work on Monday. By Wednesday afternoon, Fred pulled me aside and said he couldn't believe how bad the work was. Whoever the Cantrell daughters hired to replace us clearly had no idea what they were doing. The bad work could have caused serious structural damage if left alone. Water would have gotten under the roofing within months, rotting the decking and eventually the roof joists. Ray found sections where they'd used the wrong type of nails entirely. Tommy discovered they'd skipped ice and water shield in valleys where it was required by code. We spent 2 full weeks tearing out their work and doing it right. Word spread fast in the contractor community. Within days, 2 more of the Cantrell daughters' former clients contacted me. Both were willing to pay contract termination fees and hire me instead. One was a small office building downtown. The other was a residential project for a client who'd used Frank's company for years. I reviewed both sites and found the same pattern of shoddy work and code violations. My company was growing faster than I'd planned, but it felt right. These clients were choosing me because of my reputation and quality work, not because I was undercutting prices or making promises I couldn't keep. Faye from the bank called on Friday afternoon. She wanted to discuss increasing my business line of credit to handle the new project volume. She said my business plan and cash flow projections were exactly what the bank liked to see. My payment history over the past 3 months had been perfect. Approval should be straightforward. She could have the paperwork ready by next week. I thanked her and said I'd come by Monday to sign everything. Hanging up, I realized my company was becoming real and stable faster than I'd imagined possible. 3 weeks later, I was working late in my warehouse office, finishing up invoices and project schedules. My phone rang at 9:30. Carol's name appeared on the screen. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. She was crying. Her voice shook as she begged me to at least talk to her in person. She said she knew she had no right to ask, but she was desperate. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop the next morning. I told myself I wanted to hear her admit how wrong they'd been. Maybe I wanted to see her finally understand what she'd thrown away. Carol showed up looking like she hadn't slept in days. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Wrinkled clothes. Nothing like the arrogant woman who dismissed me 3 months ago at that PowerPoint presentation. She sat down across from me and started talking before I could say anything. They were facing bankruptcy. Their remaining crew quit last week. Suppliers wouldn't deliver materials without cash payment up front because their credit was destroyed. The bank was threatening to foreclose on the building lease. They had 3 active lawsuits from clients. She kept wiping tears from her face as she talked. She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a handwritten proposal offering me 40% ownership and complete operational control. She said they'd step back and let me run everything. They just needed me to save the company. I looked at the numbers. They owed over $80,000 to suppliers. The lawsuits would cost at least that much to settle. The business had no active contracts and no crew. I pushed the folder back across the table. I asked her why I would give up my own successful business to rescue theirs. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she said it was her father's legacy. That was her only answer. Her father's legacy. The same legacy they'd destroyed in 3 months through arrogance and incompetence. I leaned back in my chair and looked at Carol's tear-stained face. She had no real answer except guilt about her father. I set my coffee cup down and spoke slowly so she would understand every word. Frank's legacy died when you cut my pay and called me replaceable. He built that company with respect for the people who did the work. You 3 destroyed it in 3 months because you thought owning something meant you understood it. Your father would be ashamed of how you treated me and how you ran his business into the ground. Carol's crying got harder, her shoulders shaking as she tried to catch her breath. I felt no satisfaction watching her fall apart, just tired frustration at the complete waste of everything Frank built. She wiped her face with a napkin and took several deep breaths before she could speak again. She admitted they never understood what I actually did every day. They thought being owners meant signing checks and collecting profits while other people did the real work. She said they genuinely believed running a business was easy and that employees were interchangeable parts. Her honesty surprised me because it was the first time any of them admitted they were wrong about anything, but it did not change the fact that they made their choices and now faced the results. I explained that even if I wanted to help, which I absolutely did not, their company's reputation was so damaged that rebuilding would take years of work. The suppliers would not trust them. The clients would not hire them. The crew would not come back. Every relationship that made the business work was broken. Meanwhile, my own company had clean credit, growing client relationships, and a solid reputation in the industry. There was literally no logical reason for me to abandon that success to fix their disaster. Carol stared at her cold coffee for a long moment. Then she asked if I would at least consider buying the company from them for whatever price I thought was fair. She said they just wanted to pay off their debts and walk away from the whole mess. I told her I would think about it and discuss it with Kenneth, but I was not making any promises about anything. She nodded and thanked me for meeting with her at all. I left the coffee shop and drove straight to Kenneth's office. He cleared his afternoon schedule when I called and said I needed to talk about the Cantrell situation. We sat in his conference room with Carol's handwritten financial summary spread across the table. Kenneth had already pulled some public records and made calls to contacts in the industry. The situation was worse than I imagined. They owed suppliers over $80,000 in unpaid invoices. 3 pending lawsuits from clients demanded over $60,000 in damages and penalties. The commercial property lease had 6 months remaining at $4,000 per month. Their business checking account was overdrawn. Kenneth leaned back in his chair and tapped his pen against his notepad. He said if I was actually interested in buying anything, I could potentially purchase their remaining equipment and client contracts for pennies on the dollar through bankruptcy court. That would be much cheaper than negotiating directly with the desperate daughters. However, he warned that their tainted reputation might contaminate those client relationships regardless of the purchase terms. Anyone associated with the Cantrell name right now was seen as unreliable and incompetent. I sat there looking at the numbers and realized something important. I did not actually want their company or their problems. I wanted to keep building my own business with my own reputation. The Cantrell daughters created this disaster through their arrogance and complete lack of competence. Cleaning up their mess was not my responsibility just because I used to work there. Frank gave me an opportunity 12 years ago, and I was grateful for that. But I built my success through my own skill and hard work, not because of his name. I told Kenneth I was not interested in buying anything from them. He nodded like he expected that answer, and said it was probably the smart choice. 3 days later, I was finishing up a roof inspection when my phone rang. Adelaide's name appeared on the screen. She said she had another referral for me, a commercial property owner who specifically asked for me by name based on her recommendation. This was the third referral I had gotten this month from satisfied clients. My reputation was growing naturally through quality work rather than inherited name recognition. Adelaide gave me the property owner's contact information and mentioned she was telling everyone in her professional network about my company. I thanked her and promised to call the new lead that afternoon. Sitting in my truck after the call, I realized my business was building momentum in the right direction. I did not need the Cantrell company's baggage dragging me down. That evening, I called Carol back. She answered on the first ring like she had been waiting by her phone. I told her directly that I was not interested in buying their company or getting involved in their bankruptcy process. She started to say something, but I kept talking. I suggested she contact a business attorney and seriously consider Chapter 7 liquidation to handle the debts cleanly. I gave her Kenneth's contact information in case she wanted professional legal advice about her options. Carol's voice sounded completely defeated when she finally spoke. She accepted my decision without any argument or attempts to change my mind. She apologized again for how they treated me and said she understood why I wanted nothing to do with them. I told her I hoped she learned something from this experience about respecting people and understanding a business before trying to run it. Honestly, though, I doubted she would actually learn anything meaningful. Some people never take real responsibility for their own failures. They just move on to the next disaster without changing anything about themselves. 2 weeks later, Luther called me while I was reviewing estimates at my warehouse office. He told me the Cantrell daughters filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy and were selling off everything to pay creditors. The business Frank spent 30 years building was completely gone. Part of me felt sad about that because Frank gave me my start in this industry. But I knew their failure was not my fault, and definitely not my problem to fix. They made their choices and ignored every warning I gave them about what would happen. Luther mentioned the liquidation sale included all their remaining equipment and tools, but I told him I was not interested in buying anything connected to that mess. My company had everything we needed and clean credit to buy more if necessary. Fred walked into my office during lunch break the next day and asked if I wanted to hire any of the crew members who stayed with the Cantrell daughters after I left. Some of them were calling him looking for work now that the company went under. I thought about it for a minute and told Fred we would look at candidates one by one based on their skills and work attitude. But loyalty mattered a lot to me after everything that happened. The guys who talked trash about me when I quit would not be getting any calls from us. Fred nodded and said that was fair because those guys made their choice back then. Over the next month, my company finished the 3 commercial projects we took over from the Cantrell daughters. All 3 clients were happy with our work and left 5-star reviews online praising our skill and how professional we were. Adelaide called me after her project was done and said she was telling everyone in her property management network about my company. That could mean steady commercial work for years if her contacts trusted her opinion. I thanked her and told her I appreciated the referrals more than she knew. Kenneth helped me set up formal partnership agreements with Luther and 2 other suppliers I worked with regularly. We negotiated better payment terms and bulk discounts than I ever had before because my payment history was perfect and my project volume kept growing. These business relationships felt more satisfying because I earned them through my own work instead of inheriting them from Frank. Kenneth mentioned that building my own reputation from scratch was actually better long-term than riding on someone else's name. Faye at the bank called a few days later to tell me my expanded credit line was approved. The extra money meant I could hire 2 more crew members to handle all the new projects coming in. I promoted Fred to operations manager with a big raise because he earned it after years of solid work. Tommy and Ray both got promotions and better pay plus health benefits that were way better than anything they had under Frank. Fred joked that he should have pushed me to quit years ago if this was how things would turn out. 6 months after I walked out on the Cantrell daughters, my business was making good money and growing at a steady pace. I still worked hard, but not the crazy 70-hour weeks I used to pull. I built a crew I trusted completely, and we had systems that ran smoothly without me having to control every little detail. My phone did not ring at 2 in the morning anymore with emergency calls. The work felt different now because I was building something for myself instead of making someone else rich while they treated me like garbage. I ran into Annie at the hardware store on a Saturday morning when I was picking up supplies for a residential job. She looked embarrassed when she saw me, but walked over anyway. She thanked me for giving Carol the attorney referral and admitted the bankruptcy process taught her that running a business takes real knowledge and hard work. She told me she was working as a project coordinator for another roofing contractor now and learning the industry from the bottom up. I respected that a lot more than anything she did as an owner of her dad's company. She apologized again for how they treated me and said she understood now why I quit. I told her good luck with her new job and meant it. The bonding agent who handled my surety bonds called me about a week later with some good news. He said my business track record and financial stability meant I was eligible for much larger commercial projects now. This opened up chances to bid on city contracts and bigger developments that were completely out of reach when I first started my company. And I asked him what kind of projects he was talking about, and he mentioned school buildings and office complexes that needed experienced contractors with solid bonding capacity. That felt like a huge step forward. Fred and I were looking over next quarter's project schedule in my office when he said something that stuck with me. He told me working for my company was the best job he ever had because I treated the crew with respect and shared success fairly instead of hoarding everything for myself. Tommy and Ray were there too, and they both agreed. Hearing that from guys I trusted meant more to me than any profit margin or bank balance. These were people who could work anywhere but chose to work with me. I took my first real vacation in 12 years that summer. I spent a whole week fishing with my brother up at a lake cabin and actually relaxed without checking my phone every 5 minutes for work problems. My crew handled everything perfectly while I was gone. Fred called me once just to give me an update and told me to stop worrying and enjoy my time off. Coming back to find everything running smoothly proved the systems I built were solid and could work without me being there constantly. That felt better than any compliment. I walked into my office Monday morning and found 4 messages waiting for me, all referrals from satisfied clients who wanted estimates on their properties. I pulled up my calendar and realized we were booked solid through the end of the year. The growth felt manageable instead of crazy. I was not scrambling to find work or stressing about cash flow anymore. This was the kind of business I wanted to build. Something steady and real that would last for years instead of burning me out. Kenneth stopped by later that week to go over some contract details for a school renovation project. We finished the paperwork, and then he asked me about my long-term plans for the company. I told him I had been thinking about hiring another licensed contractor eventually, so we could take on bigger projects. Maybe expand into related services like siding or gutters down the road. Kenneth nodded and said those were smart moves for sustainable growth. For the first time in my whole career, I was planning for opportunity, instead of just trying to survive and prove myself to people who did not respect me. I drove past the old Cantrell roofing office on Thursday afternoon on my way to meet a potential client. A big sign out front advertised a dental practice moving in next month. The windows were empty and the parking lot looked abandoned. I felt nothing but relief that I was not connected to that place anymore. Frank gave me a real opportunity 12 years ago when he hired me fresh out of trade school. I would always be grateful for that, but everything I built after that came from my own competence and hard work. The success was mine. My phone rang Friday morning with news that made me actually yell out loud in my truck. We just landed the biggest contract of my career. A multi-building commercial development that would keep my whole crew busy for 8 months straight. The property developer specifically requested me by name based on recommendations from 3 different clients. That evening, I took Fred, Tommy, and Ray to the same bar where we used to grab beers after long days working for Frank. We ordered a round and I raised my glass. Fred grinned and said this was what real success felt like. Working with people you trust and building something through actual skill instead of just inheriting a business card with your dad's name on it. Tommy and Ray agreed. We toasted to hard work and loyalty and the satisfaction of earning every single thing we had.